Welcome everyone. I'm Ian McLean from Food and Beverage Engineering 2025 exhibition, and thank you for joining today's webinar titled Reactive to Proactive, Reliability is People-Centric. The best maintenance and reliability strategies only succeed when people, from site leaders to operators and engineers on the tools, understand, support, and actively participate in them, and crucially, work together as one cohesive unit. By adopting a holistic, people-centric approach to maintenance, food and beverage manufacturers can not only maximize productivity and efficiency, but also save time, save labor, and save costs. An added benefit of this proactive mindset is the ability to build a more sustainable and resilient operation, something that is more critical than ever before as manufacturers face growing pressure to meet sustainability goals while managing fluctuating utility costs. As part of the webinar series to support this year's inaugural Food and Beverage Engineering exhibition, taking place on the 11th of June at Derby Arena, I'm delighted to be joined by Andy Gailey, Managing Director of UPTIME Consultant Limited, who will be delivering the keynote within the maintenance seminar stream at the event. With extensive experience in the food manufacturing sector and a decade running his own independent engineering business and consultancy, Andy is perfectly placed to deliver this year's keynote and equip manufacturers with the knowledge and strategy needed to help them take back control of their assets. So Andy, a very warm welcome to you and thank you very much for giving us your time today. Firstly, could you perhaps just share a bit about your background and your experience in the food and beverage manufacturing industry, please?
Okay, so I actually fell into the food industry by accident. I'm a mechanical production engineer by training, so I was actually in automotive, aerospace, motorsport up until the mid-90s. Then I answered this very, very strange anonymous advert and found myself in a selection centre. And after about 2 or 3 months, realised, because we didn't know, it was PepsiCo. And PepsiCo had just purchased Walker's Snacks and also the Smiths brand, and they'd amalgamated them into a company called Walker Smiths Snack Foods Limited, which is a bit of a mouthful. So that was it back in 1994, and I'm from Coventry, still live in Coventry, so I'm obviously, engineering's in my blood, so to speak, and they were opening up a new snack food site in Coventry, and it was going to be the first, and it still is the only site to produce Doritos, which is a wet corn process. So they stole the market in '95 with the Doritos product, and then year on year, for the next kind of 6 or 7 years, the factory expanded at probably about a new line every year. So we came in from all industries other than food and beverage into that factory. We were all time served engineers, and we were either mechanical or electrical. I was mechanical, and we kind of became installation and commissioning engineers for the first few years. And as we moved from one line to the next, we would commission a new line or reinstall the French fries product from Leicester into Coventry. I was heavily involved in that commissioning in the first couple of years, and then we brought in what we call the pellet plant, the hard process of that product, and then all other types of snack products. So in the snack food industry, you'll hear PC, potato chips, and you'll hear snack foods, and these are two disparate parts of that food industry, part of the food industry. Potato chips is crisps that we all love, the Walker's brands, and they're basically manufactured in places like Leicester, where they have a large capacity for effluent. Coventry didn't have that, so Coventry was a snack site. So snacks are reformulated products like squares or Monster Munch or Wotsits or French fries. They are made from different powders and then starches, and then they're either baked, extruded, fried and seasoned. And then the one thing that we had that was still unique to that Coventry plant was the Doritos wet corn process. So I was there for I went there to try it for a couple of years. Thought I'd see what food industry was like for 2 years, and I ended up there 21 years. And that was because generally, if you work for PepsiCo, every kind of 2 years they change the way the plan looks or works, and usually end up in a slightly different role. I stayed in a technical role as a technician, and then the last 9 years I was there, I moved kind of to one side, and I produced the condition monitoring and lubrication strategy for the Coventry site, which involved training operators, other technicians, and also having people from other sites come in and take some of our best practices away. That involved also working from a higher level with the maintenance strategy. So we were all brought in from different areas to drive a completely different approach to maintenance, which kind of started in about 2005. So yeah, that's my background. And then I left there 10 years ago and formed straight away Uptime Consultant. Of course, I wanted to specialize in the reliability and maintenance part of the sector, but I wanted to bring together all the things that I'd learned prior to joining the food industry and in the food industry, all under kind of one holistic umbrella. So that includes training people, that includes talking to people at sea level about their maintenance strategy and how to approach it as from a proactive level rather than fully
Yeah,
reactive.
yeah.
So yeah.
What have been some of the biggest changes you've seen in the industry over your 30 years, let's say?
Automation's increased obviously across the whole piece. So I would say when I started in the mid 90s, um, our group of engineers over 4 shifts, we were only kind of 32 or 48 bodies, and we had probably 2 or 3 times the amount of agency that were hand packing. So basically, every packet that went into every box that went to the local news agent or to a supermarket, somebody had picked that packet up and put it physically into a cardboard box. Hardly any packets now get handled by hand and put into boxes. Everything is done automatically through robots, automatic case packers. Um, all you have to do is obviously produce the bags on a bagging machine, and then it goes into the system, um, and it's automatically handled all the way through to logistics when it goes onto a lorry. Probably the first time it's handled by a human is when somebody either puts it on a shelf in a convenience store, or yeah, somebody takes it physically off a shelf. The customer. So there's
Yeah,
very little handling involved.
yeah. And for a company such like Walkers and PepsiCo, who's driving that change of kind of maintenance strategy? Is that coming from you or coming from above or coming from the group as one, if that makes sense?
I think it goes in cycles, and there's a certain amount of autonomy within the manufacturing sites. Although they um, the strategy will be driven from somebody at a central local location. They're referring to somebody that's higher up the chain as to how they're going to approach what they're doing at the ground level, and then the nuances will come in depending upon the site and the plant, how they're set up for their skill levels and how they're set up for their operational capability. So Coventry site, as that snack site, will operate um, under the same kind of banner rules as Leicester, but it will be a different. So when I go to Coventry or Leicester, there'll be a slightly different aspects that you'll look at
Mm-hmm.
because it will be driven by whatever product you're making.
Mm-hmm. And across, like obviously across the same company, different sites, and also from company to company, in general, do people have the same kind of maintenance strategies and challenges
Yeah,
overall?
yeah, and this is not just in Walkers or PepsiCo sites. So I've been obviously doing this independently for 10 years now, and every food manufacturer or production industry I go into, they're struggling with the same issue. The big issue is people and demographics. So this is why most of what I do is aimed at helping these businesses with the people-centric approach to reliability. It doesn't matter how many fancy tools or processes you've got that you can aim at your production process. When it comes down to maintenance and looking after assets, it's a very, very people-centric thing. People put their hands on things, they take them to apart, and they have to rebuild them, and they have to have the right training and resources to do that. And as we go on with automation, more and more of this automated machinery, although it's taken away the layer of manual hand labor that we used to have, is bringing in more complexity. So the engineers and the technicians that have to apply the maintenance to these assets, they have to take on more and more information into their brains. So you know the thing that I think everybody kind of like is constantly working on is trying to either upskill their people, because the my generation, so obviously you can tell me I'm near the end of my
You mean our
career.
generation?
My generation, we're leaving the businesses through retirement or maybe some ill health, or we're going on to do what we wanted to do in our late 50s and 60s. So
Yeah.
we're not in those businesses anymore. So again, part of what I like to say to clients is I'm the knowledge sharing person. I want to come in and I want to try and help you upskill your people, to try and fill this gap. This gap is demographically driven, and because it's through people's ages, we can't do anything about it, because we can't birth people 50 years ago. We're the generations running out. So the idea of, from my point of view, is if I can target these guys that are in their 20s, 30s, 40s and give them some of my knowledge, then hopefully we can get them to a more proactive maintenance regime.
And obviously, you're seeing there. I mean, I know we're not here to talk about skills, but there will be a skills gap out there, I'm sure. Nowadays, it's obviously, and you can see it when you're out there.
Yeah, and I say to people usually, well, I my first interaction usually with clients is I go and provide a training day. That's for two reasons. That's my first interaction, so I get to know the client, and it's they only have to invest in one day's training, so it's not a lot of money that they're having to invest in me, and we both get to understand if we're going to fit. Because if we don't fit, I have to say that, and I have to, use my time effectively. And usually the people sitting around the table, there's usually 6 to 10 engineers and operators or maintenance managers, and they'll all be average age, I would say, would be about 50. So I'm talking to pretty much my own cohort. We're all Gen Xers around the table, pretty much. I think the last of the boomer generation has just about disappeared now. And then I'm sometimes clients will be forward looking, and I'll have couple of 20-year-old apprentices there, and occasionally I'll see a female, but very rarely. So I do some work as well with STEM, with going to schools and saying, "Hey, engineering is interesting. Why don't you come and join us?" So yeah, there's that gap, and we're trying to fill it. I think automation is kind of it's blurred it, because by introducing automation, then you needed less people maybe, and it's covered it over a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, it's a
And,
problem.
and I suppose as well, when you're just thinking about skills and people, you're going to have to approach them at a really early stage, aren't you, as well, I'd imagine, just to kind of light that fire or spark that interest in food and engineering and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm still amazed that I go in and I talk about certain methodologies that engineers that the same age as me have never heard of, because they've always been involved in fixing things when they break. Basically, they've been reactive engineers all of their careers. They've never had the opportunity or the training or the knowledge to say, well, perhaps there's a different way. Perhaps there's a way that we can preempt this early failure and intervene and put it into a proactive sphere rather than everything's fell to bits. So I actually find across the age groups that obviously the apprentices are hungry for any knowledge, so they're really like switched on. So it's surprising as well. Even the guys in their 50s and early 60s, they're like, I've never heard of this before, and I'm really interested. I think it's a fallacy that people of an older engineer do not want to have training and knowledge. I think that's wrong. I think people that say, "Oh, they're long in the tooth and they're not interested." I haven't seen that. I find that on the whole, I'm open with people and say, "Well, I'm going to share with you something today that I think is going to benefit you." Uh, that could be meaning that you're not going to be disrupted when you're having your dinner, because this is a maintenance engineer's life in food and beverage. If you go for dinner and you're lucky to get it at like 1:30, if you could sit down for 10 minutes, you're lucky in some factories, because there'll be somebody coming, a supervisor or manager coming, the oven's gone down. So one of the benefits I try to sell to engineers is, imagine if you had an easier life. I'm not, so I like trying to emphasize the soft skills as well. Uh, have your dinner for half an hour and not be interrupted.
And are you saying then that for a layman like me to understand that there not everybody adopts that proactive maintenance approach as the norm?
No, it's a very strange world we live in when it comes to maintaining assets in factories. It's generally people come like I did. People come from an engineering background, and then they sometimes somehow they get into maintenance. So an electrician will be working for a manufacturer somewhere, and then all of a sudden he'll find himself one day in maintenance. And there's nobody really goes out and says, "Okay, we're not good in the UK at saying, right, there's a course you can take where we can train you the best basics of maintaining assets." There's loads in America. There's actually too many in America. There's CMMRP and there's lots of different acronyms going around whereby you can go and do some study and take a 100-question exam at the end of it and become a reliability professional in a sphere. So we're not very good at that in the UK. I think we're getting better. Uh, but even for the basics like lubrication, there's very, very few engineers I come across that are, level one machine lubrication technician level one, and I've taken a course. And I think some of that is to do with release. So to go and do that, you've got to go away for 3 or 4 days. In this country, it doesn't seem to be seen as worthwhile to send engineers that are already involved in engineering for more upskilling and training. When you go to the US, I went to a conference there and did a keynote a couple of years ago, and there was 1,000 engineers there, all from the shop floor over 3 days. They'd come from like all over the US down to Florida. The company put them up for 4 nights. They had a 3-day conference. Some of them went on training during the conference because it was run by a lubrication partner, and they do it like 2 or 3 times a year. Whereas here, it tends to be, yeah, do your 12-hour shift, um, fix as many things as you can, and probably do it. And the guys that do it probably know that within 2 weeks they'll be back there again, doing the same thing again. It's the
Yeah.
definition of madness.
And who who do you spend most of your time with in the company? Is it like site leaders, or is it like your kind of operators and maintainers, or health and safety people? Who are the most important people?
I think that I very rarely, which is a shame, I very rarely get to speak to the site leader. The site leader has usually paid the check, paid the purchase order, and has said to the engineering manager, my in really is engineering manager or reliability manager, or maybe somebody in operations that sees it a different way. So I'll initially go and speak to them or have a call with them, and then they'll say, I sometimes I don't know, but sometimes say I've got a problem and this is what it is. Can you fill it? And then I'll obviously then talk about training. And I would say 75% of my time is like, okay, I'll come and speak to your engineers. I'll have them for the day, and let's train them in some reliability centered maintenance is the kind of the philosophy I believe in. So that's an approach to maintenance that came from the aero industry. But then I'll also say, well, there are these different aspects to reliability. It's doing the right thing at the right time in the right quality. And there's a lubrication part. If you don't get it right, nearly all your rotation assets are going to fail. And then there's things and tools we can use and apply from a condition monitoring point of view, where I explain it's like a GP. When you go to GP, the GP asks you how you are, and you tell him some information. So this is what I would do with an operator if I was visiting a factory. How's it going? What's wrong with the assets? And then the GP would get his stethoscope out and listen to your chest. Well, we get ultrasound out and we listen to the machine. He would take a blood sample if he doesn't know exactly what's wrong with you. He'd take some fluid. Well, we take fluid out of gearboxes and transmissions, just the same. We send it to a lab, we get the results, and then we come up with, is there anything internally wrong with this? We also look at heat maps of assets, same way, doctor takes your temperature. So I have this analogy where if we look at the human as an asset, we do the same things to these physical assets that manufacture our goods. It's just that we use these technologies slightly differently.
In your opinion, what are the kind of clear benefits of adopting a proactive maintenance strategy?
Well, there's choices to be had, obviously. So you can do nothing if you want, and
Right,
most
okay.
most operations do nothing about
Yeah.
being proactive and looking at some sort of technology or training to get them into that proactive sphere. It's very painful because they experience lots of unplanned downtime. And I always talk about the three finites. Now, the three finites is money and it's time and it's that resources, that labour resource. So these three things, and this applies to our life as well. Now, time is the big one because time is the only resource that we can't buy. So once we've done this webinar, you're never going to have your half an hour back. It's done, it's finished, it's gone. To buy time in manufacturing, the only way we can buy time in manufacturing is stopping unplanned downtime or unproductive time. A lot of work is done towards the unproductive time. So you'll hear about lean and about OEE and about all of those things that look at the production. But if you've got unreliability that's built into your assets anyway taking place, then you can do as much as you want with your OEE and your lean. You're never going to get there if your assets are failing every day or every week. Or so, yeah. What was the rest? What was that second part
Oh,
of the question?
yeah, just about really, in your opinion, what's the advantages of having like a proactive maintenance
Yeah,
strategy as opposed to the do nothing or reactive one that
yeah.
you were describing earlier on?
Well, when I present the keynote in
Yeah.
June, the 11th of June, my keynote talks about reliability being people centric, and towards kind of halfway through that, I go through the journey I went through. It was a 5 to 6 year journey with PepsiCo, with Walkers, where we decided reliability was shocking, and then the maintenance approach was not delivering the availability. But people sometimes talk about maintenance as an abstract thing, like an overhead you have to have, and you don't really want it. But I look at maintenance as actually being an arbiter of availability. So if your maintenance is wrong, it won't deliver your availability. And we realised in that year where we started that what we were doing as an engineering and maintenance function was not providing the availability to our client being operations. So the conversation was had that we were going to go on this journey, and it took 5 or 6 years to get from a place that was awful to a place that was world class. So that's part of what I'm going to describe within that um, within that keynote on the day. So it's a real journey, involved real people,
Yeah,
massive challenges.
yeah, yeah,
The benefit out of it was massive amounts of money, and we're not talking six figure here, we're talking seven figure sums a year.
right, okay,
So imagine some of these sites hold maybe $2 million worth of
yeah,
just spare components. Well, by doing this, we could knock half a
yeah,
million
yeah,
dollars worth off by the end of that. We didn't have to have. If you don't know what's going on, you have to have all of these spares on hand
yeah, yeah, yeah,
because you never will know what's going to happen.
yeah,
Once you're in control, so it's a talk really about getting your production in control. You're getting control of your factory. Once we're in control, we can then start saying, well, why do we actually store? Why do we store this stuff on the shelf? And a lot of companies never even ask that question. They just,
hmm.
yeah,
Just keep going, keep going.
yeah,
And so I suppose you're describing like a slow process, a gradual process of change for a company here. It's not a 1 year job. It's going to
yeah,
take time to get there
yeah.
and
There
learn.
are, and yeah, again, I have to say to people that there are no silver bullets in this game.
Mm.
There's nothing like you can buy off your shelf, the latest AI, machine learning, technology you can apply to your manufacturing, and it does away with all of your nightmares when it comes to unplanned downtime. It's a slow approach, and it's a slow approach because it's the people you have to bring with it.
Yeah, yeah,
It's not because of the technology. We've got all the things to do it, the
yeah,
spreadsheets, the approaches, the technology,
yeah,
the way of reporting. We can do that quite easily. It's the people bit that you have to
yeah,
change and bring them along with you. And that, I think, the journey that I was involved in. I think the first 18 months was the people bit.
yeah,
It was actually saying to people, uh, well, this is going to make your life better. And it was one of the key things that happened was that the operations and the engineering became one.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like being in
So
politics, isn't it?
yeah, a
The
lot of
first step.
companies I go to, uh, operations see maintenance as the people that don't solve problems, they bring
Mm.
them. And the maintenance will see operations as not giving them the resources and the time to deliver what they want.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
there's a real mismatch there. It was actually a little bit by accident because my engineering manager had to backfill for an operations manager, and it happens quite often in PepsiCo. If somebody is on an improvement ladder in the business, they'll be seconded to another part of the business. So this operations manager went to logistics in another factory, and he was like, "Well, you go and do that for a year, and then you'll come back, and obviously that'll be part of your development." There was no replacement, so the engineering manager had to do the engineering manager's job and the operations manager's job at the same time. So it was a big job for him. But when I've spoken to him quite recently, in actual fact, when I went to Orlando and was giving this speech 2 years ago, I actually got in touch with Paul and said, "Is my memory right? Did this happen?" And he went, "Yeah." And he did put some changes to it. And he said he had to wear the two hats for a whole year. So he had to be the engineering maintenance manager and the operations manager. So he couldn't fail in his maintenance role to deliver the operational availability, and his operational availability thing he had to give maintenance and engineering the right time. and he actually started giving, because he was in charge of it. He actually started giving engineering maintenance the right time to do it right first,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and he proved over a year that the operational availability went through the roof.
yeah,
So you just see there was this was it was a people thing. It was
yeah,
nothing to do with people sabotaging the plant or people being wrong. It was actually just this dynamic within the business where the yin and the yang didn't come together; they were
yeah,
like apart.
yeah. I suppose in a company like that, once, as you said, once you have used your soft skills to kind of get people to buy into the process, I suppose it just self-fulfills and self-perpetuates, doesn't it? Because they see the benefits, don't they? And it just accelerates as you go forward, I would imagine.
Yes, it does, because what happens is after a while in this process, the people that have gone through it actually become advocates of it.
Hmm.
So it's like any check. Is the thing is with change is that humans, we don't like it. I love it. I'm different to my partner Jenny, that she hates change altogether, but I actually like things when they go a little bit differently. But generally, as a working group, when we're in a factory, we tend to look on change as a bit like it's suspicious. We don't want that.
Yeah,
So the idea is that you have to sell that change, and you have to start talking about things in a slightly different way. In that the, get the operators and the maintainers and engineers to understand. If they don't understand what they're going to deliver, why would they do it? So the business, I didn't, but the business started putting out real figures. This is what it costs. They were big figures. I mean, and they'd never, I don't know where they felt uncomfortable at, but they'd never done this before. When you started seeing how much we were spending on
yeah,
emergency deliveries of spares per year, it was astronomical. When you
mm,
saw how much time was being spent waiting for spares that we hadn't got, it was unbelievable. So you had, they shared a lot of information, financial, and what it had the impact on the business that made it stick with the people on the shop floor. That actually you trust us with this information, and we can have an impact on it.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
Personally, one of the things I had was when I started doing the condition monitoring thing. There were quite a few engineers that were my colleagues that said it's rubbish. It'll never work. Um, I said, well, my aim is to make it work. And one of these guys who I respected and knew well, but he was kind of anti it. He said, well, uh, yeah, I think it's a load of rubbish. Uh, I said, well, I beg to differ, Stuart, and my aim is to try and put you out of reactive work within a year, so that you can do the work that, as an engineer, you really want to do. Because he was a fabricator, and I knew that it was a kind of difficult conversation we had, but I was okay with it. He was okay with it, and he actually came back about 3 or 4 weeks later and said, "Can you bring your tools and have a look at this gearbox? I think there's something wrong with it." So I could have just gone and looked at it and said to Stuart, "Well, yeah, there is something wrong with it," but I didn't. I said, uh, "Pick case up. It's in that cupboard over there," and we went together. And I said, "Well, what I'll do, because he was on the opposite shift to me, I said, I'll teach you how to use it, and I'll show you where the key is for the cupboard, so that if I'm off shift and you want to use it, you can go and get the meter and go and use it on the gearbox." So I gave him a 10-minute kind of how to use the device and got him to understand it was a tool. He was against a technology he didn't understand, thinking it was
mhm,
something special. I said, well, it's not. It's just a tool, it's like
yeah,
your voltmeter, but this is testing for ultrasonic properties within
yeah,
assets.
yeah,
When he was comfortable with it, he became an advocate of what we were doing, and that was important because Stuart was quite a strong character, and he actually led. he led people who were on his shift. So everybody followed Stuart. So as
Yeah,
soon
yeah,
as
yeah.
Stuart said it's good, then that
It's
whole
good.
shift went, oh, well, that's
Must
valid.
be good. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Do things like sustainability and sustainable manufacturing ever come into the conversation in food and beverage plants nowadays?
Yeah, I think the first time I heard the word sustainability would have been about 20 years ago in PepsiCo. PepsiCo were way ahead of everybody else talking about sustainability. And they were talking about it because obviously it's a power, water, and utilities hungry kind of um, manufacturing process. Some manufacturing processes you go to in engineering, they probably use a lot of electricity, not much gas, some pneumatics. When you go into the food and beverage industry, we're talking like tons and tons of water to make a wet corn process or potato chips. Um, Oil for fryers that doesn't get any cheaper, especially when you started using healthier oils, which were 3 or 4 times the cost. The gas usage is high on things like ovens and dryers, and the pneumatics that go on in food factories is the most expensive utility, and it's the one that you can make the biggest savings on. Is things like compressed air supplies. So I first heard that word sustainability yeah, well over 20 years ago, and we were again ahead of the curve in saying, okay, what's our utility cost? How can we put it against, actually put the measures against how many kilos of product we produce? What does it cost us? And let's try and hit that and drive it down. So, reducing water,
Yeah.
using more grey water, actually looking at motor signal analysis on motors to get them more efficient. And some of the work that I did was on with ultrasound and acoustic emission in driving down leakage, just simple leakage in compressed air systems was having a big impact on the amount of air we had to produce through our compressors. And so from a condition monitoring point of view, reliability point of view, ultrasound and acoustic imaging, which is a newer kind of technology, can save you um, yeah, thousands of pounds per week sometimes just on compressed air leaks.
It's sort of like the fourth utility, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah. I suppose in a way you're describing a situation where you've got like a three-sided coin, haven't you? You've got maintenance, you've got people, and you've got sustainability all working together to drive a plant forward, aren't you, really?
yeah. So I think that the thing that's always struck me as being strange, and I try to say this, is that we rightly we put safety right at the top of any production facility because we all want to go home at the end of the day. We don't want to injure ourselves. That's right. But we think we should talk about engineering and maintenance in the same respect because people generally injure themselves badly in these facilities uh, when they're under stress, when they have to react, the pressure's on, and they're usually maintenance engineers that get killed or get injured. So
Yeah.
we should be looking at maintenance and doing things in a more proactive way. So we do it when things are not running or we're not doing it in a reactive sphere as having a big impact on the safety scorecard. And again, one of the things that I found I struggled with selling what I was doing internally within the business when I first started until I actually read an article where somebody had done a study over 5 years and they'd actually found an inverse correlation between accidents and reliability. And they found that when they tracked these different facilities over 5 years, they found out the accident and the near miss rate, when that went up, the downtime was very heavy. But when the reliability went up into the higher quartile, the safety curve came down and actually less people got injured or reported near misses. So it's definitely correlated. People that work safely in maintenance don't injure themselves, so therefore there's a massive benefit. So the people aspect is one of those things that if you can again make people aware that compressed air leaks cost shed loads of money. So in the my experience, we had three compressors, and when we did the compressed air leak first part of the survey, we turned one of the compressors off, so we only had to run two. So that's the kind of the kind of the amount of money you got back. So I think there is this kind of three-sided aspect to it. Sustainability, the reliability and maintenance aspect can deliver on all aspects. So that's unplanned downtime. When you've got unplanned downtime, your yields suffer because you start throwing things in the bin. So you take a production line down, especially a wet corn process, as soon as it goes down, you can't stop it. It goes to the pigs. The product goes in bins, goes to compactors, and you there's more problems stopping it and restarting than it is trying to, you know, you can't just switch them off. They
Yeah.
kind of the
Yeah.
stuff that's already in the process. So there's in process that hits your yields. Well, your yields, sometimes if you hit your yields by a couple of percent, that's your profit goal
Yeah.
because
Right.
everything's so expensive.
Yeah.
When these things go down, you can't turn the oven off. It's not, oh,
Yeah.
it's gone off. Let's just turn the oven off because it takes hours to cool down and hours, a couple of hours to
Yeah.
warm up. So yeah, it works throughout the whole piece. So sustainability wise, if you think about it from a labour perspective, if you can avoid unplanned downtime, then your labour is better deployed.
Yeah.
So the metrics we used to use is the amount of manning on a production line when it went down. We were talking like just for people standing still was costing between £2,000 and £3,000 an hour because you didn't make product. Then you've got the
Yeah.
lost product. Then if
Yeah.
you go into you've got transport already arranged. Well, if you're down for 6 hours, the transport never takes the product. Then you've got product supply having to speak to Tesco's. Tesco's are saying we want our product. We've 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 got we've got shelf
Use it.
space for this stuff. So you use a real kind of it goes throughout the whole supply chain.
Casting your mind into June's event, and I know you know pretty well, and obviously it's food and beverage engineering. It's going to co-locate with the Sustainable Food Factory Conference. What other benefits can you see engineers getting from coming along? You know, food and beverage engineers in events such as this.
Yeah, well, one of the reasons when you reached out and I said yes is because it it has this sustainability aspect that you'd already done previously, and then there was this new food and beverage engineering aspect. And I know from my personal interactions with engineers in food and beverage, it always goes, "Oh, there's nothing for us. There's nothing for us to go to. We've either got to go just to main tech or to some other kind of, you can maybe go to a sustainability show. It's all like sometimes it's all electrics or electronics or um, so I think this show is going to be uh, more encompassing for the whole of people working in maintenance or thinking about new approaches. And I know through seeing the list of some of the people that are already got stands there, there's going to be a really good mix where you could go there as you know, um, an engineering manager or a maintenance manager or as just an engineer off the shop floor. Hopefully, people can get their engineering manager to take them along for the day, bring some apprentices with them, and
Yeah.
then learn. I mean, the whole again going back to America. America's really good at this. I must admit, they're like light years ahead of what we do. They're really refreshing when I went there a couple of years ago. So I think that's the thing is that you can get a lot of information in just that like one day. So you could be there for 3 or 4 hours. If you go there for the engineering part, obviously you can then dip into the sustainability part, and vice versa. I think
yeah,
they work together really well, the
yeah,
aspects.
yeah. At the end of the day, as you said as well, it's all about people. You need people there, don't you,
Yeah,
to network and interact and share experiences and just learn from each other. And something which is so focused on food engineering should add a lot of value for these guys. What about for people outside of the food and beverage industry? Other kind of other things they could learn from an event such as this as well?
yeah. I, and I'm a big advocate of actually the things that you can learn from different industries. And this is a thing that one of the things that I can give to my clients is I would say 70, maybe 80% is still food and beverage or that type of manufacturing. But that other 20% that I work with, there might be an automotive or utilities. So I've worked with people like Severn Trent and National Grid Gas Network, with Nissan. Nissan was my first major client. And I bring the things that I've learned in food and beverage that are all rotating assets into the automotive industry or into the water industry and say, well, this is what we do. Actually, we're heavily regulated in food and beverage. So we try to do the right thing. And there's also the margins are kind of can be constrained. So we have to try and do the right thing and then bring that into other industries. So I think engineers, you don't have to be in food and beverage. I don't think to come to this show because there are going to be a lot of people who will work across a lot more aspects other than food and beverage. So, whether they be in a CMMS platform or lubrication or bearings, or connected technology, they rotating assets is they're basically everywhere. So if you've got rotating assets, you're looking at technology, you're interested in sustainability, and you want to learn something, another thing is see a velodrome. So it's in the middle of a velodrome. So if you've never seen one and seen the
Absolutely.
banking on the end of a velodrome, that's going to be interesting.
So for even for people such as integrators and machine builders, there's a rationale to come along as well and learn and interact with people.
Yeah, I think so because, well, if you're a machine builder, why wouldn't you want to be at a food and beverage engineering show? Because um, I've got a couple of connections that already said yes, we're going to be there. Well, they're influences within food and beverage factories that work with OEMs to specify machines. So the networking effect of that alone will be, oh well, I need machines, you build machines, let's talk. So I think there's always in these shows, there's all different aspects. The learning bit, this I always look for something different.
Yeah.
Whenever I go to these shows, I want to see who's got a new gizmo technology. Um, I go with it as an open mind, and also to meet. I kind of trying to target meeting three to six people I can really connect with, not just say hello, but have a talk about their technology or their
Yeah.
application.
I think one of the advantages as well, because it is co-locating with sustainable food factory, you'll meet people as well who maybe don't have an out-and-out engineering remit, but have maybe more of a kind of sustainability, operations remit. And I think it'll help. It'll complement the conversations, I would suggest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean the most recent. So I still go back to my old plant in Coventry because I've still got connections that work there, or people actually I work with who were operators who are now uh, managers. So they've
Mhm.
come up through the system, and now I go and carry out some consulting for them. And the last one I did was with the utilities department there. And that was actually looking at um, thermal imaging devices and acoustic images to use on utilities, so on pneumatics and on the effluent plant. Um, and their remit was obviously saving utilities, the sustainability piece, heavily on that. Well, but they probably haven't got the skills and knowledge to get there quickly. So I help them get there quickly, basically. Go in there, work with their guys on the shop floor, show them what to look at, teach them a little bit about the the aspects of thermography and ultrasound, and use some acoustic imaging as well. So that they then have got the tools really to go and to keep monitoring these assets so that they can stepped approach save more and more utilities.
Andy, thanks ever so much for that. I really appreciate your time today, and for sharing your insights and giving us an overview of what you're going to present at the event in June. And just for people listening, I just mentioned, as I mentioned at the start, Food and Beverage Engineering 2025 will take place for the first time on the 11th of June this year at Derby Arena. And it's free to attend for food and beverage manufacturers and will provide the perfect platform for a range of industry decision makers, site managers, operations, maintenance, engineering, planning, utilities, process engineers, and more to network and learn and to see new products and solutions firsthand from our exhibitors. In fact, anybody working in and around food and beverage manufacturing would benefit from attending on the day and taking a day out of the diary to come along. And notwithstanding Andy's keynote, there'll be other presentations throughout the day delivered by industry experts, which will also help support your efforts to become a more sustainable and a more operationally efficient manufacturer. And we hope you can make it on the 11th of June at Derby Arena. I look forward to seeing you there, and would like to thank you for taking the time to watch today's webinar.